This week, I try to marry my love of Japan with football.
And I plan to rip their heads off. Yaha!
Yaha! I'm Kyle.
And I'm Garrett.
And we watch anime. Garrett, this week I am super excited to show you a hidden gem from the early days of my budding weebness. An anime that made me love how Japan can stay committed to an idea of recreating something, even if they don't truly understand it. We are going to be discussing a show that is perfect for being just 12% off of everything having to do with American football. But that small piece makes the show super fun, entertaining, and endearing. We are talking about the American football shounen sports anime Eyeshield Nijurichi, which in English means Eyeshield 21. But before we start, Garrett, what is a quick trailer of what new fans are going to be experiencing this week?
To quote the opening theme song of the show, I'm ready to unfurl my rolled up map. I hope you out there get that football reference. It's not a reference. This show is bananas.
I love it, and I love how bananas it is. It is, as I said, it's like seeing an alien try to be human, and then it's like the third rock from the sun. It's just like Japan doesn't quite get it, but like it's endearing, and they're really thoughtfully trying to do it this time. So
well, and what kills me is this show. If I thought something in my head, and sure enough, I watched the credits. They did this in conjunction with NFL Japan.
Right, and to be potentially a show for their NFL Rush program in the United States. So There was supposed to be an American audience, hence why all the theme songs had Japanglish all the time. So we're definitely going to give the theme songs a shot, how they explain football a shot. But for those of you who are completely lost and wondering what we're talking about Eyeshield 21. It's a manga that came out in 2003. It is now complete. It went for about 6 years. And then the anime came out in 2005, and there's a very clear patina on the show. It does look like a 2005.
Yes, it looks like the anime came out in 1987.
Right, exactly. Slightly duller. The colors don't pop as much for a show that's as cartoony.
The hair. Oh, the hair.
Oh, and saying it has clear protagonist hair.
It is like the protagonist hair, but on a Dawson's Creek level.
I can imagine like a mix between Sana and like the James Vanderbeek meme of him crying, like what a big mix of that would be. And honestly,
I just want to be the next Steven Spielberg. That is a Dawson's Creek reference.
Yeah, and if honestly, we'll be honest, we are two men in our mid-30s talking about a show that is clearly for kids, but I think there's a lot to pull out of this show, considering that we both love the sport. We're all diving into this idea of anime just to see how those two things clash. Mm-hmm. In 2011, though, this show was really popular. The Japanese website Amoeba conducted a top 10 poll of all of the best anime and manga to come out of Shonen Jump, which is like the top manga magazine there, and it placed 7th. So that's a pretty good ranking for all the things that come out. Mind you, this is where Bleach and Naruto and One Piece comes out of. So to be
was this like the year where Chicago won Best Picture? There was like really not a lot of competition.
You're saying it's like the crash of anime. We get it. Racism's bad. No, Crash is a good movie. So during Eyeshield 21's original run in the magazine, the author Iganaki sensei went to the United States and watched college football and National Football League games. He didn't know anything about the sport. And despite never having played it or watched it, he chose this theme after deciding that he wanted to create a protagonist that was wimpy at the beginning and then could be like really good at a sport by the end of it.
Yeah.
There's definitely a
spoiler alert, he still doesn't know anything about football.
Yeah, like he doesn't even know how to hold the ball by like episode 5, which is crazy to me. But essentially what he wanted to do was create what is known as a Kamen Rider style, which is like, it's kind of like Clark Kent to Superman, where Kamen Rider is this kind of like Power Ranger, but only one Power Ranger, in which he's kind of a nerd and like really dorky, but then he puts on the suit and he becomes a superhero. He wanted that to be the case of like Sana, who's very unassuming and weak, and then also he puts on the eye shield, and now he's this like mythical character.
Right, Clark Kent to Superman. And it's funny that you say that because I actually have in my notes, which if anyone could see at home, I was watching my computer and scribbling in every direction on my piece of paper here. But I wrote references to or similarities to Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man.
Right. He's definitely like Peter Parker. He's definitely like, but for the sport of football, which is not a really big thing in Japan. So it's interesting. But
well, he's Superman because he puts on his uniform and he gets this confidence and this strength.
Right.
He's Batman because so no one can know who he is.
Right.
He wears an eye shield, hence the name of the show, Eyeshield 21, and masks his voice by talking like this, like Batman. And then thirdly, his ultimate has to be his love down the road, who's his best friend when he grew up.
Yeah.
She can't figure out who he is, just like Mary Jane and Spider-Man. So
even though he's like the shortest guy in the world, and like there's no one that could both equally be that height in Japan. So yeah, so let's so people don't get too lost. Let's give an idea.
Okay, so you want a real breakdown?
What's a breakdown of the show? What's it about? Obviously, it's about football, but like there's a little bit more to that.
So our lead character is Sena, and Sena, it's his first year in, I'm going to guess, high school because we never leave. Right. And
we're back in high school.
High school. And so he gets into the high school that he wants to get into because at the beginning he's looking at test results that are going to be posted. He thinks he's not going to get in. And he gets in, and right next to him is his best friend, who I think is Mamori. Mamori. She is his best friend, has been since kindergarten.
And she's kind of like a mother hen. She's like constantly up his butt, trying to tie his shoes.
She hovers. She's like a tiger mom, except she's a friend. And she protects him, and she's like, I feel like Sena is hardcore friend zoned, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't believe in the friend zone because that's like a misogynistic idea of relationships between men and women. But I can assure you that if one exists, Sena is there.
Right.
And
he's that Inudashi, that dog boy in Japan.
Right, exactly. So he gets into the school, and Mamori's like, you got to make friends here. This is a chance to start anew. You should join a club. And he's like, all right, I guess. And I don't remember. I blew through 8 episodes today, so I don't remember exactly how he comes to find it. But he ends up going to some shack, and some shack next to the football field that Lord knows what goes on in there. It looks like a really, really shady place. And he's about to get beat up by these guys who are, again, he looks like he's 8, and these guys who are somehow in his class look like they're 32.
Correct. It's the kind of like Prince of Tennis rules where like the main character is going to look like a small child. Everyone else is going to look like, people in college.
Right. So they're about to beat him up, and this big guy, your friendly,
Kurita is his name.
Huh? Kurita.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kurita plays he's like, if you've ever watched a football movie, there's like that really big, vicious, but also gentle giant.
He's the gentle giant. Yeah.
He's a gentle giant.
Like at one point he bends the pole of the thing back to like fix it.
The first down pole?
Yeah, the first down pole. Yeah.
Right. And so he protects him, and he starts sharing his joy about how he wants to do all these things in football, and Sena's like, he knows I'm a tiny man. I cannot play the foosball. and so Kurita's like, well, you could be the manager. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, all right, I'm down with that. I can be the manager. Hey, Mamori told me to go join a club. Here I am. I'm going to join a club. And then we meet Himura, who is an absolute psychopath. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but you've got a protagonist who is very meek, very quiet, has been beat up and been a gopher for other people his entire life.
Right.
And he's trying to get out there, so he joins a club, and he finds himself thinking that he's going to be the manager or the equipment manager of the football team.
Right. And so Hiruma is like, start off, I'd be like, why do I want to follow this? So you got to give you explanation. So Hiruma is the, like, if you could imagine a man who
is the best.
He looks like a bat. He legit looks like a human bat. Like, if you want, he's got sharp fangs. He's got these huge, like, giant hair, and his eyes always look evil. And I love him because, like, before I didn't like him that much. I didn't like Hiruma. But I like him more because he's just like always has a gun on his hand, and he always emphasizes his point by like shooting bullets in the air. He's like, "Get out of there!"
We are in high school, and he's like, "Join the team!"
And he's always just like, "Ah!" He's always doing like the Rambo shot in the air to emphasize his points, and it's always starts by like a low lull. It's like, I mean, you could be the manager, but you're even better as a running back. Ah!
By the way, I love it the entire time, and I have no idea because I'm reading subtitles. I'm watching the sub, but I'd love to hear how in Japanese they actually do this. So he wants to be the manager, so he insists on calling him the manager.
Pretty much, yeah. He consistently uses tough language. He doesn't respect any teachers. He knows he runs the school essentially because he has this like book of secrets that he keeps on everybody to like. Because he can't get
like if the Mean Girls had guns.
Yes, basically. Because he knows he can't fill the team. You know, we both know, and everybody in the United States knows, that you have to have 11 people on the field to play the game, and he can barely get 3 or 4 people in a given day. So he has to use, like, subterfuge and, like, blackmail to get people to join the team, essentially.
And Kyle brings up a good point there when he says that in America, we all know that you're supposed to have 11 people on each sides. So one device that this show continually uses and makes it very clear that, one, they need their audience to understand what football is, but also that it's a part of the NFL's propaganda wing. They do these little asides, like you'll be watching a show, and then all of a sudden they'll say like a key word, and it will say, football clinic.
I love Amefuto Clinic. Amefuto Clinic. What happened when Ray Lewis was arrested in 2000?
He was ultimately acquitted for accessory to murder, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah! And then they say a word like interception, and then a little devil bat, because they are the Daemon Devil Bat, is their team name, comes out and usually explains it correctly, except the one that I used, interception, they describe a fumble as an interception. They describe a fumble as an
interception. They really muff that part, really. They won't.
But anyway, this device appears numerous times, even so much as, like, at one point, Sena actually gets, like, chased by the devil bat, explaining the rules.
Shooting lasers at him.
But
they always find ways of making it cartoony, and I love that about it. Like, I love that part of it, that it still has, like, its emphasis of fun, even though it's a sports show.
Oh, I totally... I had issues with the Prince of Tennis because it took itself so seriously.
Right.
I openly like chortled at so much stuff in this show.
Like even when the teams face each other, they're like their mascots do like a Street Fighter like intro page. Like it's really fun. And so just to kind of like round out like the first 4 episodes and like what we learn about Sena is he is going to be the running back of the team. And the reason why that Hidema found this out was he's been a gopher his entire life, so much so that he's always had to run away from bullies. And because of that, he's got this weird talent of being able to run 4 240s, which is insane.
Right.
Like, what is an NFL? What is, like, the fastest NFL on record? Like, probably, like, 4.18, maybe?
I don't know. Let's look at that. NFL Combine record 40. NFL Combine fastest 40 ever is it's 4.22.
Yeah, so he is running faster than the fastest record recorded like 40 times. This guy's insanely fast. He's obviously doing like superhuman speed and also allows him to be able to cut. So when the pressure's on, Sena is good at evading and being fast. And so it makes him kind of a superhuman when it comes to being a running back. For those who don't follow football, it's the guy behind the quarterback who generally runs the ball through everybody to get touchdowns.
Right. And like all sports anime, they recognize that the action is going to be terrible if they actually try to animate it.
Right.
So what you see is action still shots with strategy. So, you know, if you've ever seen a movie and someone becomes intensely focused and you get like tunnel vision. So when Sena starts to run, it's as if time slows down. He sees the image of the defenders, the people he has to run by in front of him, and he envisions these arrows for which way he has to go in order to get by them. And that's how they animate that. And I thought it was a cool device. I liked it.
I think so too. And it gets more cartoony as the show goes on. So and then another thing that I wanted to bring up is just to round out who the characters are. Eventually, those 3 bullies that mess with Sana they call them the Ha Brothers, because they have this one quip that they do the entire time when they're trying to be tough. One goes like, huh, and it does like that for the rest of the series. So they called the Ha Brothers, who eventually joined the team. Spoiler alert for like episode 9 or whatever. So, but it's just really funny because it really highlights many of the different rules that you and I have laid out since the first sports anime. And so you and I are going to kind of run through the checklist to see if it hits the rules that we've set aside. And if we decide that there's other ones, we might be able to add more. But the first rule I made in that show was it follows an underdog story. Is that a check or a no check?
Yeah, 100% check.
100%. This follows an underdog story. Unlike Prince of Tennis, who was like a prodigy, this is like clearly the underdog story. The second rule, they find out that they have one skill that they are superior in this sport.
Yes.
Obviously, the case was Sana. He's the fast runner and all that stuff.
He's kind of like Orlando Jones in The Replacements, where he's really fast, but he can't catch the ball.
He can't catch the ball for snot. The third one is sports anime are spoken exclusively through internal monologue and external observers.
Right.
I would say everybody is constantly. Would you agree, Garrett?
Check off the box.
Fourth one, love stories are non-existent.
Well, I'm only 8 episodes in, but I think clearly there's some level of tension. I mean, I joked about the being friend zoned, but Momori clearly is a important character in his life, and whether he develops emotions for her later on, I don't know, but I'll put that as a maybe.
Right. All movement based on the sport is almost superhero or super powered in appearance.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? Yes. Like there's a legit part in episode 7 or 8 where he legit disappears and runs through the guy. Like that shows you what this show does, and I can't wait to go through all those with you. The last one we have is characters are one-dimensional and are meant to fit specific parts of the sport. I.e., this is the guy who's good at catching. I.e., this is the guy that's good at blocking. Yes. And I would say, would you agree that's pretty much what this show does?
That's true. That's not how sports work in real life, but for the sake of the show, exactly.
And they're all one-dimensional in their archetypes, too. Like, you got the fat, lovable guy. You got the, they don't really grow as much over time. They just kind of get better at the sport. So, so this thing clearly follows the rules of sports anime. But I really wanted to talk with you because you only got to meet one of two of the teams. That the show, there's many teams that they face over the course of the episode.
3 teams.
That 3 teams you got to see? Great. So this show is committed to the idea of the team mascots and the weird quips of each team reflecting the people themselves. So, like, for example, we got the Damon Devil Bats is headed by Hiruma, who legit looks like a bat. Then you get to see my favorite, the Koigahama Cupids, who I liken to the Glass Joes from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out of teams, and they're like the lover boys. They're like, ooh, we're the Cupids. We have all these girlfriends.
If your football team's claim to fame is that every player brings a girl to the game, I don't think you're playing very good football.
Right. It's like, I want to liken to like the San Francisco Fairies from basketball. Like that style. Just like, they're just like the floaty team and stuff like that. We then get to meet the Ojo White Knights, who are like the militaristic football team. They're the best.
For the kingdom!
Yeah, and they all have there's so much that I was typing when we were doing show notes, because this show is just extra everything. Every team has their own chant, so Garrett referred to before, the Damon Devil Bats are the rip them to shreds, yeah! And the Ojo White Knights scream, glory to the kingdom! And like stuff like that. So I'll run through the rest that we get to. We got the Zokugaku Chameleons, and Garrett, you can tell me your thoughts on these. Has a guy, their lead guy has long spindly arms and huge hands, and he has a tongue about the size of a chameleon. They're
like there's no subtlety whatsoever. We're just going to hit you over the head with a mallet.
There's a team called the Tayo Sphinx who legit dress up like Egyptian people. The quarterback is the pharaoh, and they're the one. It's like a pyramid. They like the line is the focus of it, so they elevate the pharaoh, who's the quarterback.
Well, so in the second game that the Damon Devil Bats play, it takes like 4 episodes against the Ojo White Knights.
Yeah.
And there's a team in the crowd that is scouting them, and they're all dressed like Buddhist monks.
Yes.
And one is a white guy with dreads.
They're called the Shinryuji Naga. Mind you, all these characters are supposed to be Japanese. And they all dress like monks or like to have a really Japanese theme. The Tayo Sphinx has the pharaoh, and they're all based on like having a strong line, which is good in football. Then there's the NASA Aliens, which is the American team that comes to visit.
Why are they playing in the same league?
They just come to visit and show football. Like it's like a exchange program. But there's no town or city. They're called the NASA Aliens. Like NASA sponsors an American football team. I don't know why.
In high school. Maybe they're a Texas football team. I don't know.
Maybe, but we get to another team called the Yuhi Guts. And they're all...
Do you have it?
We guts.
Now over to Mo Quirk.
These team names are wild. Then there's another team called the Cebu Wild Gunmen, who are all cowboy themed, and the quarterback is constantly like tilting his hat and like walking like this towards everybody.
Oh.
And then then you meet the Shinryuji Naga. I could go on and on, but basically all the teams are cartoony. Like, whatever your mascot, it would be as if you and I went to a high school in which the mascot was the Indians, which is very offensive term. As if we walked around all day in headdresses and like...
So, I don't know. So, while football might not be widespread in Japan, baseball is very widespread. And I don't know, like, all the team names. I know some, like, the Tokyo Giants are pretty, like, standard fare. There's also, like, the Nippon Ham Fighters.
Yes,
so, like...
Swallows or the... Swallows and the Buffalo. Yeah, they'll think the names. It's kind of like our names in baseball, like the White Sox. There's nothing necessarily, crazy about those names, but it's as if everybody walked around with white socks on all the time, and they just went through their daily lives dressed with white socks. It's that similar conceit for this show. It's like they commit to the team name like crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no I in team, so if you're the White Sox, you're all wearing white socks.
Another conceit of this show is that it tries its very hardest to explain football. I want to see the first question that the show is going to ask for both of us is, does this show explain football well? In like the first few episodes is really heavy in the terms. Do you feel like you would, if you have never seen football before, this explained it to you a little bit?
God, that's really hard.
Yeah.
Because so the best way I can liken it is a lot of people out there listening, the thousands and thousands of you out there.
Thousands!
And thousands! There's probably a fair amount of you that like Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. And, I watched all 8 Harry Potter movies, having read the books extensively and being immersed in the world of books. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of times the movies are doing their best within 2 to 3 hours to give you every detail that they can. Mm-hmm. But even I would sometimes notice things that would get glossed over. And I thought to myself, people who are like, oh, I'm going to go see the new movie, but they've never read the books, they had to get lost sometimes because there's just nuance that most people in this country, especially in the past 40 years, are immersed in football in one way or another, whether you didn't like it, but your school was good at it, or whether you're super into it and you watch it every Sunday with your family. So it's kind of hard to take myself out of that and be like, oh, would I have got it? Do I think they gave a heck of a good effort? I mean, yeah. Was I absolutely amused with some Tecmo football animation that they laid down? Sure. But I'll give them a 6 out of 10. 6.5 out of 10 for explaining football.
Right. And because of the show's, like, the sports anime rules of, like, external observers and internal monologues, you had to have, like, almost, like, complete newbies understanding it on the fly while they're playing it. And I think that was important, even though, like, that would have gotten you murdered in a normal game.
And sometimes the show gave up. And what I mean by that is, like, they would have those football clinic clips.
Ameto Kiko! What did Tom Brady do after impregnating his wife, Bridget Moynihan, in 2006?
He left her for a Victoria's Secret model! What a cheating scumbag!
or they would have like detailed scenes explaining why they're doing something. But then they got to this one bit when the demon devil bats are playing the White Knights, and there's a sideline reporter and her like cameraman or whatever, and like she goes, "What's this?" He's like, "Oh, it's 1, 2, 3. What's this? Oh, it's ABC." And they just like rattle it off in a row, and you're like, "Oh, okay, that's how you're gonna explain it away."
External observers, like that'd be important information for the team to know while they're playing the sport, but they just kind of go with it. The second thing that I think would have made more sense to me to this game was if they had done it, but I know you can't really do that in the beginning, is that the Daemon players played both sides of the ball. Which
Iron Man football.
I remember when I was in high school, my first year was at a Catholic school, and the school had nobody that had honestly played football before, and I had gone to public school before then, and I went to public school since that. And one of the things that I remember was I played both sides of the ball for the entire game, and I was gassed by the middle of the third quarter. There's no way that you can like sustain Iron Man football in high school for as long as they did. So I think if they had just like done a better job of like making this person a defense versus this person an offense, I would have believed it a little bit more too.
Also, something you touched upon, and I sort of said, when we start the show in the first episode, the football team is Harima and Kurita.
That's it.
That's it. It's 2 dudes who run the football club.
Right.
And they're like, hey, we need 9 other guys, because at this point, Sena is saying he's just going to be the manager. Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, when's our first game? He's like, I entered us in a tournament tomorrow. That's not how football works. Because even baseball, it's a team sport, but it's based upon individual performance.
Right.
Whereas football, there's actual plays that you run.
You have to learn a lot. Like, there's a lot of thinking that goes into the game. I know it's like considered a grunt sport, but most of the time, half of your practice is literally sitting in front of a board and going over what you're going to do. Because if you don't have that plan and no one's in simpatico with each other, you're just going to be terrible. So, on top of that, you know, the show once again does really crazy moves. So much like we did with Prince of Tennis, I want to go over some of those moves.
Okay.
And see if they're functioning within the world of football, or if it's just anime garbage nonsense. So the first move that we're going to talk about, the first 2 you've seen already. The others we haven't yet. The first one's called the Devil Bat Ghost. It's a technique in which Sena is able to use a crossover step to make a sharp cut without slowing down. It makes him look like he disappeared, and it kind of looks like he goes through the guy. Would you say that's a relatively close?
Yeah, it's a juke. It's someone who has a really great juke, and you know, obviously they're playing it up with the whole disappearing thing.
Right.
But when you go to tackle someone and they juke out of the way and you miss, it is like they disappeared. So sure, I'll allow it.
And if the guy can run faster than the fastest like combine performance, then yeah, he probably would be able to pull it off. Yeah. The second, and I thought this one drove me nuts, was the spear tackle, who is the character Shin's basic move. You and I had the same problem you did, so you tell me, Garrett, what you thought about this.
All right, so when they play the Ojo White Knights, Shin is their best player.
The ace.
Okay. Actually, he's not just their best player. The show refers to this high schooler as the best linebacker in history.
Correct. Right. And he's like a no-nonsense guy. So this guy should know form, technique. He should know everything about football. Right. And this is his best move.
First and foremost, if you don't watch football, maybe you watch wrestling.
Right.
A spear is a very specific thing.
Right.
And it involves diving and thrusting your shoulder into the midsection of the other player or the other opponent as if a spear was launched into their stomach and taking them down.
Right.
Shin spear is a failed tackle in which he somehow lets you get by, and his Rubber Armstrong. What was that character?
Stretch Armstrong.
Stretch Armstrong. And his Stretch Armstrong hand reaches out and with his fingernails rips you down to the ground. And they're like, oh, the spear tackle.
What? I like how you said, because it is, like, if I had come off the field, even if it was successful, if in my actual professional, not my professional, in my high school football days, and I had tackled someone with my hand, my coach would have reamed me out for several minutes in front of everybody because it is poor form. You do not. That is the last resort. If you're grabbing someone with your hand, there's barely any strength in your hand. That's why you have to wrap them
because I know Sena is really small,
right?
But he has a lot of force moving forward.
Right.
So your fingertips, I mean, you're going to rip a fingernail off or break a finger getting it twisted in his jersey, trying to bring him down like that. And you're not going to bring him down because hands aren't that strong.
But
it's not a spear.
Yeah, and it was important, but it was important to the anime because how else are you going to be able to animate that he turns into a literal knight with a lance going through the opponent if you can't have his hand literally transformed into a lance, Garrett? Garrett, I'm seeing, for those who are using this to the audio medium, the medium of just the podcast, Garrett is losing his mind thinking about it.
It was arguably the most aggravating part of the show. Because, look,
I also, if I was the opposing team, because that's another thing, is that it actually showed you what would happen if someone was tackling like that the entire game. Saying it was literally my ribs hurt. I have I feel like you're breaking my ribs. If I was the opposing team and I saw a guy who was consistently punching and grabbing at ribs all the time and not using good form, you're going to hurt someone. There's a reason why you want good technique. It's not just so that you don't get hurt or that you play good defense, so you don't injure someone.
Right.
And I know that
including yourself.
If my coach saw that if someone was reaching and grabbing around my rib cage, that's an injury about to happen. And at least in high school football, they'd be like, dude, get better. Sure. And then another thing that drives, which is funny, and I think this is before we go on with the moves, is I love how this show makes it seem as if they're running at each other every time in a versus form. But just the animation between the two of them make them all look like they each ran from 30 yards away from each other. So they're just running and yards are just passing. Yards are just passing. And it's just the guy's gonna be ooh, he's coming up on me. There's more yards passing. It's like they all started from the opposite side.
Right.
And came at each other.
So here's the thing. The Daemon team, Hiruma's a decent player.
Right.
Kurita's a big, strong lineman, but they suck.
They're terrible. Yeah.
They're like the joke of the interscholastic league, okay? So their strategy for this game against the White Knights is to hand the ball off to Sena every time. That is exhausting. And the other team notes, he just keeps getting faster. No, that's not how that works.
If I'm getting uppercutted in the ribs every time I'm running, that would be terrible.
Right. And he's playing Iron Man football. He's playing defense as well, which their defensive strategy was just so spectacular, where they said, we are going to have a 100% failure rate on the run defense, and we're going to have a 100% failure rate on the pass defense. So they put in a goal line defense, which is, if people out there don't know, you are essentially lining up your entire defense on the line,
on the front of the line,
to stop any possible run, and the goal. And I guess their goal is to get to the quarterback before he could throw it. But really, they wanted to force the throw because, again, this guy who's running the ball every single time, Sena, their defensive strategy is now to have him chase down every receiver and try and intercept the ball. I mean, pure brilliance. This is Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, Bill Parcells level strategy.
It's truly Madden nonsense. It's just like when we played when we played Madden at home, football video games, and you play the goal line defense because your friend takes too long to throw the ball.
Yep.
You just try to. It's like engage 8 every play.
Yeah.
So it's not good football, even though they're the best team out there. And yeah, it's a lot of all or nothing football with the Damon Devil Bats.
Can I just say that there was some really wonderful tidbits in the show that dated it.
Yeah.
For example, the dated cell phone usage, having a cell phone being a big deal. So I guess that should have led me to believe it wasn't 1987, that it was at least 2000. But I think one of my favorites was, at one point, one of the characters calls another a butt munch. And I was like, butt munch? That's like my teenage years.
That is late 1990s, early 2000s, camp talk. Summer camp talk. So the next move we're going to talk about is from the Shinryuji Naga, who are the kind of monk-looking folks, and they have this move called the Dragonfly, in which so weirdly enough, the guy who has the shaved head and the guy who has the dreads are brothers. So that gives you, so they're related, fully by blood, and they both act as quarterbacks, and they basically do multiple laterals between the two members, as it's but. So it's essentially like the last 3 seconds of every football game, every play. What do you think about the Dragonfly, Garrett?
I didn't get to see this in action. How do they line up? Because that seems like a penalty.
It seems it's a wishbone formation with no quarterback, basically.
Is that an illegal formation?
That's a legal formation, yeah. A legal formation would be if someone was in motion.
I mean, put it this way. If I was any other player on that team, I would quit very quickly when I was like, these two brothers think they're going to play like patty cake with each other and win a game.
There's a lot of times where people should be questioning anybody's understanding of this sport through most of these. And I agree. And I think the problem with that is that now you have a very easy understanding of who to go after. Like, you never have to really think about it. Yeah, it's like, and I hope they make that sound too. The next move is called the pyramid line. This is the Tayo Sphinx, the Egyptian folks, and they create a literal V-shaped pyramid formation. And which
they ripped this straight out of the Mighty Ducks.
I picked this because it's
the flying V. Quack, quack, quack.
But this time they're going Sphinx, Sphinx, Sphinx. And everybody's got the mascara on and everything, and they do the flying V, Garrett, as they're running. Now,
is there a knuckle puck? Hold on.
I would love it if there's a knuckle puck version. Well, actually, this actually gives me to another thing. The Seibu Wild Gunmen have what's called the quick draw pass. It's a guy who's a specialist with short, fast passes. It takes him 0.15 seconds to get the ball out of his hand. Catching him in a blitz is near impossible. His throwing technique is odd as well. As opposed to releasing the ball from over a shoulder thrower, this quarterback named Kid throws the ball in front of himself with both of his hands to generate an incredibly fast spiral. So you know how like you try to create a spiral when you don't know how to do one?
Yeah.
But you spin the ball between your two hands. He can do that, but as a pass. What do you think about that, Garrett?
That last little portion about the spiral is complete nonsense, but prior to that, it just sounds like you're talking about those Patriot years with Tom Brady and Wes Welker, where he literally just threw to him in the flat without even looking, and just
you couldn't really do like long distance. Yeah, you couldn't really do long distance with that. But yes. So it basically turns the guy into a fungo or whatever those things are. Those like, all right, so it takes a lot of creative license with what is possible with football. I think it's like if you're Japanese and like you've never heard of this sport, I'll give it to you. I think it gets at least a passable grade for me for that. I agree with you. Like it gets a passing 60%.
Oh, okay, fine. We're gonna. You want me to rate these real quick?
Sure. Let's go through them. Yes. So the Devilback Ghost. You give that. How much realism do you give that?
Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We discussed 5 movies. The Devilback Ghost is the number 1 most believable.
Got it. Okay. So you're going to be ranked this by how believable they are.
Yes, number 1 most believable.
All right.
The number 2 most believable is going to be the quick draw pass, because other than the spiral thing, it's an actual play that we've seen run for years.
Right.
Years. Number 3, I'm going to give to the pyramid line.
Okay.
1, because I love the Mighty Ducks, but 2, because that's what you do on a kickoff return.
Right. Yeah.
Is you create a wall in front of your guy.
Right.
4 will be spear tackle, because it's a tackle, even though it's absurd. And the 5th and most unbelievable is the two brothers playing hot potato.
The Dragonfly.
As an offensive strategy.
So, but that's actually not bad comparison to what we learned from Prince of Tennis. It's actually not that bad. So before we get to the rest of the show, I also wanted to give space to my other favorite part of this show, which is the music. I love that it's meant for kids, so I'm not going to give it too much, go too much guff. And I also want to admit that it fits our 12% off theme in that these are the most Japanglish songs I've ever heard in my entire life. But they always made me smile when I listened to them. So it's like most of the time I'm skipping songs because I watch so much anime that I always do and I listen to it maybe once or twice, but I always let it go through at least half of the way just so I can hear the ridiculous Japanglish of it all. So what did you think of the songs? I was like, Garrett, you have to listen to the songs.
So I'm hopefully you'll take a moment right here to play this sample now.
Got it.
But there was a part, and I'm going to bastardize this, where I thought they sounded like the B-52s in both the lyrics, where it was like, the blazing sun looks like melted sherbet, and I'm a loser who's gonna drink it up.
But if you will allow me, Garrett, because I will be playing this still, is... I actually practice it so I can sing it on the podcast because so imagine yourself, you have the 4 main characters, Seina, Kurita, Yunuma, and Momori spinning around like playing cards, and you're in on the hot days, faster down the mother, it's on the time out. And you can imagine this guy is because there is a people who still love the pompadour days of the United States. So you can imagine while he's singing it, he's actually combing his hair.
He's like an Asian Elvis.
Yes, and there's actually a subculture for that, like a rockabilly subculture in Japan. Because he's like, on the hot days, faster than the time out. And my favorite part was he's trying to fit in like a Rolling Stone because he heard that somewhere in an English song. It's like, hi, this is like a Rolling Stone. And you're right, it does say it's like the blazing sun looks like melted sherbet, and I'm a loser who's gonna drink it up. I'm just I did not stop every time. I'm like, no, I love this. No matter how stressed out I am, I gotta listen to at least that first part of the song. Oh my god. Oh, that makes me laugh so hard because it's just and I love it because the last lyrics of the song before they get to the final refrain is literally the sentence. This is the last lyric. I have to risk my life to play this stupid game. That is the last lines. You can imagine they called Johnny, Takeshi Rockabilly out. He's like, what's going on, fellas? Oh yeah, we're gonna need you to play a song about football. He goes, I don't know what that is. Oh, he's like, well, it's it's like a normal shonen anime where a kid's trying to get really good at the sport. Oh, so he's risking his life to play a stupid game. Oh, right on, I get it. That's what I imagined the way it went.
You're very committed to that character.
I'm gonna imagine. I know that Takeshi. I know he's got a real name, but I'm gonna call him Takeshi Rockabilly. Rockabilly. And then the first part, the opening, was no different though, Garrett. I love the Japanglish of that one too. If anything, it's less ridiculous, but just hearing the slightly off words I find breakthrough is the first lyric. I find breakthrough. I love it because it's also I'm just dreamer, never gonna give up. It's forget all the subject markers. We're just gonna forget all of them.
I think someone should take the movie Rudy and dub over the song every time you hear the swelling orchestral pieces in that film.
Rudy, 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 and you're I found breakthrough. Okay. Probably we'll do it for the vidcast, so watch us on YouTube. But for otherwise. So this was part of the part in anime in which no matter how the theme or the mood of the show or whatever, if murder happened, the theme songs were always this corny, cheery song. And you're gonna find that with earlier shows. There's a show called Hunter x Hunter, and which literally has people being murdered in several different ways. Hearts are getting ripped out. They're getting their heads lopped off. At the beginning is greet a good morning. And I'm this does not match the theme of this show. So, and I think nowadays, you and I can both admit that the music that came out in like the mid 2000s anime onward,
Mhm.
they actually asked real musicians to come in, not do jingles, but just give their music. So, but it's still nice to think about all the old style of anime music that you have. So I'm glad you joined me on this journey, Garrett. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over the last 4 episodes because I think the central theme and the thread by which the show goes, as we had mentioned, the Ojo White Knights are the big baddies. They're the mountain that Sana and the Devil Bats will have to climb. They're kind of in the same area. They're the team that's in the same division. While one guy is a terrible tackler, he's still fast and strong. He's literally like a man next to a baby when it comes to Sana. And so let's talk through that system, like what's going on with the Ojo White Knights, and let's talk about like what the last 4 episodes of that game was all about.
Right. Okay. So the Ojo White Knights have this really hard-ass coach. Think like John Voight in
Varsity Blues.
Varsity Blues. It's like John Voight in Varsity Blues. He definitely makes his players get injections in their knees so that they can
close the curtain. Like, you can't say this.
Right. So they're led by this like hard-ass coach, and they've got 3 primary character players, okay? They've got their own Kurita, sort of this like a guy who actually does play both ways, both offense and defense. He's a big, burly, easily confused dude. You've got the aforementioned...
Much like everybody has a thing. Like, everybody has to have a thing in this show. They have to have some sort of quip or character trait. His that his pants constantly come off.
Yep.
And he's constantly having his pants tear off. I don't know. He's like King Hippo. Like, he's just like, and his butt showing and stuff like that. It's, but yeah.
So you have Shin, who we talked about, who is the greatest linebacker in history.
Ever. Ray Lewis? No. Brian Urlacher? Forget that fool. No, it is Shin from the Ojo White Knights.
So he is very serious, the best football player that they have, but they also paint him as being like this super studious guy. So like at one point he wasn't a part of any shenanigans, but he takes blame because he's the team leader, so he gets benched for the beginning of the game. And so he gets to sit on the bench and watch Sana for the first time play on the football field, and his team's like a little baffled by this like really great player, and he just lays down these deep observations that are like horrifically wrong. But like football is, his life, and he has this really wonderful training montage when he takes the blame for the shenanigans, and the coach is like, y'all are soft, and whatever. At one point he ends up doing handstand push-ups on only his thumbs, like sweating in the dark,
like Goku from Dragon Ball Z, and like just sweating the whole time. Yeah,
right. One to a lesser extent, I said 3 before. There's actually 4. One to a lesser extent is the quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if he'll become a bigger player later. In terms of this, they just basically they're like, hey, he's incredibly focused and doesn't make any mistakes, and he doesn't really get fleshed out in the first 8 episodes.
Right.
And then the other big one, because really it's 2. It's Shin, and then it's Haruto Sakuraba.
Yeah.
And he is apparently a male model who models for a hamburger chain. Hamburger chain. And
he goes, this burger is a touchdown. Which I'm like, sign me up, let's do it.
Which, by the way, this is high school. And high school and college especially high school, is supposed to have the illusion of being amateur.
Yeah.
And there's this like real like slimy PR guy who's like putting the hamburger chain stickers on his helmet. Like
he's like, yeah, go out there, kid, put the sticker on and run around with it.
But if there's like 2,000 people at this game, 1,800 of them are teenage girls who want to touch Sakuraba.
And they say he's the ace, if only for the marketing.
Right, but he's actually terrible.
Right. And what I think you learn from this show, and one of the conceits of the show that I also think gives it gravitas and grounds it in a really cool idea, is that this show tells you that, in high school, that they tell you in this show that you can't do club sports after your junior year. So for a lot of these players, this is their last shot in sports. So if they are going to try to get to the Christmas Bowl, which is the Christmas Bowl, the final, basically the Super Bowl of high school, that this is their last shot to do it. And so it does give it like a lot of like real stakes and real tears when they lose. But this tournament means nothing. This is like the beginning exhibition games and stuff like that. But yeah, as you find, like, Shin becomes the foil to Seina's growth. Shin is the natural who has yet to find a rival. Seina is the guy who's just started but is exceptional at the thing that he does now.
Yeah, rough around the edges, though.
And rough around the edges, but he's able to push Shin because he's able to be faster than him, which Shin thinks there's no one faster than him as well. I mean, a high school that can run 4.3 is still insane.
So let's talk a little bit how this plays into it. So this becomes a 4-episode arc in which you said they recognize one another as their foe.
Right.
So what keeps ringing in Seina's ears is something Himura, his quarterback and Devil Bat himself, said to him, which was, it doesn't matter if someone beats you a dozen times as long as you beat them once.
Mm-hmm.
What type of lesson is that? Because we watched like 2 episodes straight where he just tries to run by him.
Right.
Very minimal change in strategy. Nope. And then he gets fingertip brought down and he just keeps trying to run by him.
It's basically Army football where they've pretty much run the same offense since like 1947.
Yeah, and the Devil Bats lose by like 50 points, but oh man, Seina ran by him once.
Right, I think it's like the idea that like there's this prodigy, and it was like we put the fear in you because we actually have someone who can beat you. And if he just got a little bit better, he could take you out. And in a game that matters, that game really didn't matter.
So then I have a question for you, Kyle. I wrote something down, and I want to know, is Seina an OP?
No. Because a OP starts strong, stays strong.
Okay.
And the idea is that they don't get beat by physicality or being better at what they're good at. They usually get beat by the externalities of it, right?
Yep.
As I said before, if Seina, if you don't score 3 touchdowns, I murder Momori, then yeah, kind of like an OP status would be given to him. But this is him getting stronger over the course of the anime just by him learning, getting better at the sport, learning how the game is played, but also like it's like also the belief in yourself. Like if you're meek and you don't have confidence in yourself, you can't be OP. Your OPs know they're strong. Like OPs like understand it. Like Saitama for One Punch Man is bored with how good he is and he knows it. Like that kind of stuff. But so yeah, the show's interesting. It has a lot of great moments. I think just like the storyline it tells is very interesting, and you really feel for this team, even though it's Japanese high school sports that mean nothing. So Garrett, what do you hope to learn from the show? But before that, the first question I always ask is, would you keep watching? If you didn't have to do this show and you had like a free, Saturday a couple months from now, and this could be a possibility for you, would you keep watching?
Well, I got to be honest with you. So the next arc, so what it appears like the next arc is they have Seina, who is a great running back.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like they're now going to find a great wide receiver because they are teasing that there's someone trying out for the baseball team who is the master catcher, whatever that means.
In the United States, that would not sound great.
Right. And that kind of turned me off because I'm like, all right, I'm going to watch them assemble a team.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the show.
Mm-hmm.
Laughed a lot. Concept was pretty good, and I enjoyed where they fumbled it because it made it endearing.
Right.
But probably not.
Okay. So knowing that you're not going to, but if you were to sit down with me over beers and said, "Hey Kyle, I want you to let me know if this is going to happen." What are some things you're at least hoping that you would learn from the show or that you would get out of it? Like, what are some mysteries?
How long does it take for Momori, the female lead, to figure out it is Seina? Mm-hmm. How does she react when she finds out that the person she's talking to behind the Eyeshield is Seina? How does she react? Is there ever actually any romance there? which would fly in the face of the tenets of a sports anime. As the show goes along, do they dial back the education about football portion, and which allows the story to be developed more without the clunkiness of having to explain it? I think those would be. Do they ever arrest Himura for his excessive use of guns on school property?
That I'm going to obviously say no. In fact, he gets more guns usually. It's usually like 7. It's like The Mask at the end of the movie, The Mask.
Right.
Where he's got like 1,700 guns in front of him. It's just like, nah!
The one thing I almost missed on this show was the end credits come on, and I would just switch to the next episode, but then I realized there was like a 60-second vignette at the end of every episode.
Right.
And one of them was as they open like Himura's locker, and just like assault weapon upon assault weapon just like flow into the room.
So here's what I will say. If I was, for all those weebs out there that might think that he should give this another chance, because yes, the beginning part does stretch out and like the formation of the team is a little bit slow. But once you get to the main tournament, it actually becomes a really fun tournament show. And I will say your answers you can get satisfying answers for all of your questions.
Okay.
I think. And when the team's fully filled out, I think is where the show shines. So, but yeah, but I'm not expecting you to get.
Well, because it's kind of like at this point, think about the Marvel movies. How many more origin stories do you need?
Yeah.
And so while you're filling out the team, you're getting origin story after origin story, and a lot of origin stories, everyone has a different like superpower or skill, but the discovering that, the people that you meet along the way, massive formula.
Right.
So once that's out of the way, I could totally see how they're like, oh, now we can just have fun.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think, yeah, you're right. If you have to have an investment in the beginning of the show to even make it worth it to go forward, because you're just gonna get them. They're like, ooh, do they get a wide receiver? Ooh, do they fill up their line?
Yeah,
ooh, they get a tight end.
And that's
the defense.
and that's tough, because imagine now you love anime, right?
Right.
So imagine if I said, Kyle, you've never seen the sitcom? It's on Netflix. You got to watch it.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And you're like, how many episodes should I watch? And I said, well, it gets really good after 12 episodes.
Right.
You're going to be like, wait a minute. I have to invest 6-7 hours to find out if something's good? That seems like a lot.
Right. I agree. And so here's what I will say before we get into our Weeb and Noob score is, because the arcs are, like you said, like 4 to 5 episode chunks, you can get in and out of it just because each one's based on a game. So there's very clear buttresses to each arc in this show. And I think if you could deal with that formation and kind of jump in and out of it, I think that you would still get some fun out of it. But once again, it's like, so the Weeb and Noob score, once again, for those who've never heard this before, this is basically not to say if the show's good or bad, but it's essentially to say how important it is to get involved in. If you wanted to either continue your journey as a fan, or if you're a new person, you're trying to get into anime, how important it is to get to that goal. And I would say for me, my Weeb score for this, and I love this show still, is I'm going to give it a 7.5. Now, I love this show for several reasons, but I started watching the show in my 20s where I had not a lot of time. I didn't have like my responsibilities were just school, and I could kind of, DICK around all the time doing whatever I wanted, and I could invest a little bit of time into it and just have fun. It's a relaxing time. Also, like, you got to love the how off it is from the United States, and if you like that kind of like how anime is kind of funny when it fumbles a little bit on the American culture stuff, you're going to get a kick out of this show. So for me, I think it's worth watching, especially there's really no other American football anime out there. So if that kind of hits a need for you, I would say go for it. It's a great show for me. I enjoyed it, and I sometimes need a little cartooniness in my life. Garrett, what would you get as your Noob score?
Even though I'm not going to pursue it, I give it a 7.
Oh, good. Good.
I don't think it has. You don't need to watch this. No one needs to watch this. However, if you want to have a little fun, and if you want to see another culture kind of fumble with something that is like second nature to you, and you like to laugh a little bit, and you're not worried about like similar like tropes being
right,
I think it's a fun show.
Right.
It's a fun show, not something I need to pursue, but I bestow upon it a 7.
Right. If you're a weeb who likes making tier lists on characters where like you like their unique quips, this show's heavy on that, so you might be. All right, so now that we're done kind of shooting off at the hip about anime and football and stuff like that, we've reached the end zone, and now we're just going to ask your thoughts. Is Eyeshield 21 one of those sports anime that you really can dive into specifically because of how unique it is? Do you appreciate its cartooniness and the weirdness of the characters, or are you thinking it's too amateur, juvenile, and childish for your taste? Let us know in the comments below because we really want to continue the conversation, and seeing what you've said on social media, a lot of you like this anime. Also, follow us on Instagram. We are at Wanwa Podcast, WANWA Podcast. And we're also on Twitter at Weeb_Noob. And you can always find us on our host site at anchor.fm or wherever your podcasts are sold. Give us a review. We always appreciate it. But before we end, Garrett, what are some final thoughts about Eyeshield 21?
I mean, the show's entertaining, but it's also educational. If you want to know how to throw a field goal or kick a safety, take a gander.
I know there's someone out there that's like, oh, I really would like to learn that. Because I mean, we're all weebs out here, who knows about your basic level. But, we're going to be donning our ice shields, taking a charge for people, punching each other in the ribs, and wishing you all a great. See you next week.
Take care, y'all.
You don't understand, I'm a loser. By subscribing to our channel.
We can't get out of high school. Help in the comments below, for the love of God. Suggest something that isn't set in high school.